Hi, I'm Damon Hill, and these lovely items here are going to be auctioned in Pall Mall on November the 4th at RM Sotheby's. And they're part of a collection of stuff that was left by my mother to my sisters, of items that are relevant to my dad's career, Graham Hill. And so very, very important motor racing memorabilia. This one, possibly one of the most important pieces actually, because it's the 1962 Formula One World Championships Drivers' Trophy, Conducteurs' Trophy from the FIA. It's a little thing, but it's very significant because my dad was the first ever British driver in a British car to win the World Championship in a BRM in 1962. The trophy is given to the driver, but actually in a way the significance of the 1962 World Championship was that my dad was a British driver winning a world championship. He wasn't the first British driver to be world champion. Mike Hawthorne was also world champion. And this was the first time that a British driver in a British car, BRM, had become world champion. So that was fairly significant because latterly you could argue that the combination of that had kind of kick-started the whole domination of motorsport by Great Britain with Lotus, and latterly all the other teams being based in the UK and moving, because before that there were Ferraris and Alfas, and you know, Van Wall of course was a near thing with Sterling Moss, but my dad managed to pull it off, and him and BRM became the first ever British driver in a British car to win the World Championship. And then next to it we've got the 1969 Monaco Grand Prix trophy. It was the last Grand Prix that my father won. It was the last, if you like, of 5 Monaco Grand Prix that he won as well. Particularly significant and beautiful trophy it is too. So in 1906, I was doing splendidly well, leading the Monaco Grand Prix, and we'd perfectly timed a pit stop, which is quite unusual for Williams, and I'd got a good 10-20 second lead on the next guy, who was Olivier Panis, I think. And anyway, something fell out of the engine, and the oil fell out of the engine, and the engine broke, and that put me out of the race. But so I never won the Monaco Grand Prix, even though I was leading it, and I had had a pole position at Monaco. But that would have been nice to have added another Hill name to the Monaco trophy. But my dad never won the British Grand Prix, which I did. So we've got it covered one way or the other. This was his 5th Monaco Grand Prix victory. I mean, he had dominated Monaco for the 60s. You know, he won half the races of the 1960s in Monaco, so it's quite an achievement. He was known as Mr. Monaco, and he was much appreciated, I think, by the Rainiers for his dashing looks and his charisma. And the other thing to say is that although I watched the race in black and white, there's some lovely colour photographs of him standing there with the gold leaf Team Lotus car, beautiful red and white and gold car, and the crowds in the background. So yeah, it was very colourful victory. This is my father's crash helmet, which is famous in its own right for this design, this distinctive design, which I also carried when I raced in Formula One. So it's had 2 generations of world champions wearing this London Rowing Club design. My father started off rowing, his first sport was rowing. He always said that he was only good at sports where he was sitting down, and in one he was even facing the wrong way, so that was his little joke about rowing. But he carried on the London Rowing Club colours on his crash helmet because he was a very proud member of the London Rowing Club. And I carried on my dad's design with the blessing of the London Rowing Club, and my son also, Joshua, he raced with the same designs. We've had 3 generations of Hills racing with this distinctive design. And this is a helmet from the 1970s, 72, 73, a Bell helmet. So it would have done many Grand Prix. The foam inside is slightly perished, and it's a bit of strong smell of mildew in there, but that's all to make it more authentic, I think. Yeah, it's an old item. But it's it's probably been worn. It's been used. They didn't change the helmets every Grand Prix like they do today. I think some people even have a different helmet for every session. So they have multiple crash helmets these days. In those days, they'd buy a helmet and keep it for life, it seems to me. One of the early full-face crash helmets with the chin piece, it wasn't long before that, and I think it was 68, my dad was wearing an open-face helmet. So 69 onwards, they were wearing full-face helmets. So yeah, I think my dad was one of the early members of the Grand Prix Drivers Association, or maybe may even been a founder member, I don't know. But they often got together, the drivers got together to talk about safety, track safety, all sorts of things that could be done to improve safety, like fire was the big thing. And so use of overalls, things that could be done to improve protection if there was a fire extinguishers for marshals, that sort of thing. So they got stuck in on the safety side, and of course it was noted that the driver's face was pretty exposed. So they brought the chin piece in, which was one of the big developments in crash helmet design, it seems blindingly obvious to us now, but in those days it was a revolutionary thing to actually have a full face. Your whole head was inside the crash helmet. This is the Leemon 1972 Leemon Trophy. It was a trophy that was presented to my dad on the rostrum. There's a picture of him holding this trophy where he was covered in, he's got a fantastic great big garland, and then there's him and Henry Pescarolo, who both won the race on Matra in 1972 at Le Mans, and that completed my dad's triple crown of motorsport, the only person ever to have won the triple crown of motorsport, which is, depending on how you measure it, the World Championship, Indianapolis and Le Mans, or Monaco, Indianapolis and Le Mans. It doesn't matter because he won all of them anyway. So that has got good provenance, and there's a beautiful photograph of him. I'm sure he filled it with champagne and had a few glugs out of that. So, I'm sure it'd probably take a good magnum full. The point to make is that after 1969, that was his last victory, he broke his legs badly and had a terrible accident at Watkins Glen, and that was really the end of his competitiveness. And he was 40 years old. I mean, so people had decided that he should retire, or he was pretty much finished, although he came back and had another go in Formula One and got a point in South Africa, and then he started his own team. So he never gave up really racing, but nevertheless, he wasn't done completely after the accident, because he came and he did Le Mans, and probably Le Mans was probably suited to him with his difficulty with his legs, because it was less frenetic than, say, a Formula One car. So he still had the ability to drive and be effective, and very much impressed Henri Pescarolo, who had doubts about having my dad alongside him in the car, but he was super impressed apparently by his performance in the wet that night. That really kind of rounded off my dad's career, really. It was, the next thing was his own team, which he was building up. And so we never got to find out what would have happened with that. So I think it's entirely possible he could have won the World Championship with a Formula One team as well. But lovely items, all part of the collection, the Graham Hill collection, that is going to be on sale in Pall Mall in the RM Sotheby's auction on the 4th of November.